How can you spot a true Bison fan? They have an exclusive Bison debit card from Gate City Bank in their wallet. Plus, they know that for every card order, Gate City Bank donates $10 to NDSU. Show your spirit with your own Bison card today at gatecity.bank/Bison or instantly at any location. Gate City Bank, for a better way of life. Member FDIC. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo podcast, brought to you by Gate City Bank with the Forum's Jeff Kolpack. I'm Dom Izzo from WDAY Sports, North Dakota State. Back at home this weekend for the first time, welcoming in the Murray State Racers, no longer of the Ohio Valley Conference, now a full-fledged Missouri Valley Football Conference member and making their first trip to the Fargodome. This is the furthest north that the Murray State football program has ever been. The furthest north prior to this was a trip actually to Minneapolis. They're going to beat that coming to Fargo, North Dakota for the game on Saturday. They'll beat it again next year when they go to Grand Forks. I don't think they can go any further than that unless they're going to Idaho or somewhere
Is
in
Idaho
Seattle.
farther north than Fargo and Grand Forks?
I think Moscow might be. I've not been
close.
there. I don't know. Pocatello is southern Idaho, so I think Grand Forks will probably be.
I'm no Magellan, but it seems pretty close.
A Magellan reference here to get us going. Before we get into this, we are taping this about an hour after the FCS playoff rankings have been revealed, which is a convenient timing for us to do this. They spent way more time on it than I thought. I had it at 90 seconds on the under-over. They actually devoted, I'd say, about 7-8 minutes to it. Unfortunately, ESPN once again decided to show a video clip of San Diego State when they're talking about South Dakota State. We're only 13 years into this, guys, about trying to figure out Division I.
And ESPN's game day has been to Brookings, for God's sakes.
And it was being talked about to go for this coming week's game.
We're in the business.
Yep.
And we know schools across the country. Yep. We know who is who.
Correct.
And we live in Fargo. Yep. You're ESPN. Yeah. You're the national brand.
You gotta know what's going on.
How can you continually mess that up?
It's like a perfect record of that every year.
Oh, it's just unfathomable in the business.
No. So the Jackrabbits are number one. No surprise.
No surprise.
Montana State, no surprise at 2. Furman came in at 3. I don't think that's a real surprise, Kolpack. That's where they are ranked in the national polls. South Dakota is at 4. What do you make of the Coyotes at 6-1?
I detect a little hesitancy in your voice there.
I'm not sold
on wins, on quality wins. NDSU.
You've got to put them somewhere, and they beat Youngstown State. They had a home win against the Penguins. Their other FCS wins are Indiana State, Lamar, and
St. Thomas.
St. Thomas. They're unbeaten against the FCS. You got to put them somewhere. I don't know if I have
certainly a top 10 team. That's debatable at 4.
Delaware at 5, I'm kind of iffy on. That's the only CAA team that you have in there.
Let's be real about these rankings. I don't think it's the 10 best teams in the FCS. I don't think it's certainly that. No. But I think it's probably the most appropriate when you rank them, when you take in all the conferences as a whole and who they've beaten. Yeah. There's only 3 wins over FBS opponents, so there's really not a whole lot of that. That maybe helps Sac State when it beats Stanford.
Correct. I think
but
that's
Southern
why
Illinois never got in.
Nope, SIU is not in there. In the
and they're
top
5-2.
Yep.
So SIU is 5-2 with an FBS win. Western Carolina is 5-2. Gave up 51 in a win. Lost to Furman. Lost to Arkansas.
I got some real issues with 9 and 10. The rest of the top 10 is Montana at 6. They have 1 loss, which was to Northern Arizona. They also have a non-Division I win, which I know still counts, but it doesn't count as much. They have a head-to-head win over Idaho, who's 7. They have an FBS win over Nevada, an FBS loss as well to Cal. Sac State, as Kolpack mentioned, at 8 with their win over Stanford. They lost head-to-head to Montana State. They play the Grizz in 2 weeks. Western Carolina at 9, I got real issues with because their only win that they have so far of any is of Chattanooga. They lost head-to-head to Furman.
That was 52-51.
Right. They lost head-to-head to Furman.
At home.
So I'm not sure if I'm ready to sing their praises yet.
Well, I guess
Incarnate Words at 10.
Okay, let's just take the local team for comparison's sake.
Who's out?
I'm not sure NDSU should be a top 10.
No, I didn't
but,
think so.
But you compare it with Western Carolina on quality wins. You got Central Arkansas, I think it's a good win. Eastern Washington's a decent win. You lost to South Dakota, which is 4.
Yep.
Lost to UND, which was nationally ranked. Yep.
That's their Western Carolina has wins over Samford, who's bad. Eastern Kentucky, Charleston Southern's bad. The Citadel is bad.
They're really bad.
Chattanooga's okay. Chattanooga's ranked. They have 6 wins. Chattanooga's 6-2. They lost to an FBS team, an SEC team, I want to say. I think it was Arkansas, ? And their other losses to Furman head-to-head.
Debate, digest, whatever. Yeah. It's really, there's so much to be decided yet. A whole month.
Incarnate Word's got no business being there, Kolpack. I'll just tell you that right now. That they have a non-Division I win. Here are their wins. Northern Colorado, bad. Yeah. Abilene Christian, bad. Something called North American. You know where North American University is? It's in Texas. It's an NAIE school. Southeastern Louisiana, bad. Texas A&M Commerce, bad. McNeese.
Winless.
They were trailing in that game.
To a winless team.
Yeah. So that's their resume. That's again, this is exactly the reaction they want is for me to do this, but there's no reason they should be there. That's why they're not seated. They'll be those two teams will be playing on Thanksgiving weekend. And to your point, as we'll transition off of this, there's 4 weeks left. There's a ton of football to be played, and this, I would say the only thing I think is for certain out of this is 1 and 2. After that, I think everything's up for grabs. I think 1 and 2 are pretty solid. I don't think that's going to change.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change.
Unless the Cats lose to the Grizz.
And the Brawl of the Wild in Missoula.
Correct. Unless something like that happens, I think that's the only way that changes on the top.
Which could happen. That's that series, that game is unpredictable.
Now, fans, I know we have a ton of listening audience in Moscow, Idaho. Montana State plays Idaho this weekend in Moscow. If that happens, if Idaho wins then we've got something else to discuss, because then Idaho would have wins over Sac State and Montana State. That could get them
that would jump them.
With an FBS win, too, in their back pocket. That could get them up there as well. That's part of the fun and the intrigue of...
we have a lot of listeners in Moscow?
We got listeners all over the place. I'm just assuming we do.
I heard we're huge in Belgium.
So you had a conversation with the longtime sports information director at Murray State, Dave Winder. Mm-hmm. I've visited with him a few times since this all came about. It was April of 2022. I got a phone call from a trusted source saying this is going to happen, that the presidents have voted. It was not unanimous, as we now know, but they are going to extend an invite to Murray State. And I had heard this, Kolpack, when we were in Normal, Illinois in October of 21, that Murray was being considered in the Missouri Valley Conference, which for our listening audience, they now know there are 2 separate entities. There's the Missouri Valley Conference and the Missouri Valley Football Conference. The MVC wanted Murray State for hoops. That's a well-known program. John Morant is their most famous alum, who plays for the Memphis Grizzlies. Popeye Jones played there. They wanted them for hoops. They had to find a home for football. They found a home for football. Now, after, I would think, plenty of airtime has been spent on them, certainly on this airwaves and on my show, they're here. They won their first Valley game, which says something to be said. North Dakota State did not do that. In beating Indiana State. They've lost their last 3. I thought your story, and you can check it out at inforum.com, is insightful in what they're trying to do and what they want to do.
They're saying the right things, Dom. They're saying the right things. Now, if they continue to do those and follow through on those, that's another thing. But they're saying the right things in that they're upgrading their locker room right now, I believe. Their weight room's on docket to do that. They need to do something to their stadium and continue to improve that. That said, they're number 3 in attendance in the Missouri Valley. Yep. Number 3, and we're halfway through. Drawing, just over 13,000 a game. That's pretty good. Now, that surprised me a little bit. I wasn't sure what kind of, I guess I never looked at it, so I really didn't know where they'd fit. They're holding their own, beat Indiana State at home, 30-28. South Dakota was a 21-7 game going into the fourth quarter. That ended up 38-7. SIU was at home, 27-6, lost. Had Missouri State, lost 28-24.
Yep.
Missouri State scored with, 2.5 minutes left to win that game.
Game out, yep.
So the Racers are holding their own. Their coach is great. Dean Hood, he's 59 years old. He's a veteran. He's been around the block a bunch. And I talked to him yesterday. Well, I don't even know what day it is. Talked to him yesterday. he's a great quote.
Yes.
I mean, he's one of those guys, and he's talking about. We talked about recruiting footprint, and what his quote was. Well, you got to find the fish. You got to know where to go fish.
Got to go where the fish are. Yeah.
And I'm going, this is the kind of guy I'd like to sit in a boat for 3 hours and fish with and just listen to stories.
Yeah, I got that. I visited with him for the first time.
You got to know where the battle's like. Yeah. What's it going to be like? What's a fight? What's a fight going to be like?
Well, and their traditional recruiting footprint is in the South. That is not where football players of the Missouri Valley Football Conference traditionally come from. It's from neighboring states of his in Illinois and Missouri where he's going to need to get into. And this is an uphill battle. And you said it right away when they got admitted to the league. How committed are they going to be to football? We know they want to be good in basketball. How committed are they going to be in this, or are they going to be a doormat in this league? And that's
goes back to the funding. Yep,
right.
Absolutely. Goes back to the funding. Can you have a recruiting budget to go get guys? Do you have cost of attendance? I don't think they do for football.
Not for football.
Do you have the ability to staff it right and to get NDSU's got a recruiting? They have a recruiting coordinator, but then they also have a recruiting assistant.
Yep.
One guy who's in charge of I can't remember the title, but whatever. They're well staffed, and Murray State added 2 assistant coaches this year just to get up to the 10 allowable.
Yeah, right.
That's not in addition to all the other staff people that other schools in the upper echelon of the FCS have. You have to staff it right. You have to do that. You have to fund it right. You have to go about and you have to get players and you got to invest in it. They say they want to. Yeah. We'll see what happens down the road. And that's in talking to their AD, Nico. He said, that's going to be the deal.
You're talking about director of football recruiting and player personnel. Is that the one you're talking about? Yeah, that's Ian's title. Yeah, director of football recruiting and player personnel. It's a high title for Ian. I know he listens as well.
But they have other staff there too. I mean, that a lot of teams don't have.
No, I mean they got a huge staff that certainly Murray State does not have anything close to that. I am intrigued. They also have a bunch of transfers on this roster. They had to play 2 FBS games this year. They played Middle Tennessee and Louisville. That's a money thing to keep the
5 days
going.
apart,
right.
too.
That's tough because they played one on a Thursday. That's a necessary evil when you're Murray State that you've got to take the bye games, and if you have to do more than one, you risk obviously your team getting injured early in the season before you even start what I like to call the gauntlet, which is Missouri Valley play.
And they're doing something this year that they've never had to do in the Ohio Valley, and that's charter airplanes.
Yeah.
Made a note of that. Charter to Sioux Falls, now chartering here.
Yeah, that's a whole different animal for them that they've never had to run into before.
Illinois State, I would guess, is a bus.
Yeah, I would think so. For where
it's not a short bus.
No, it's probably they're going to do that. I would think so. Not off the top of my head, but I am intrigued next year for us to go there and to get the vibe of what it is. UND goes to Murray next week, so I'm interested to talk to our colleagues that cover University of North Dakota what it's like there, but to see how they embrace it. Because I know in your story what Dave was saying, I think fans have turned out to see the new blood, to see a Southern Illinois.
They're curious.
Right, to see a North Dakota. They don't play South Dakota State on the schedule. I think they have the Jacks coming up next year. To see what the hubbub is about this league that has produced the national champion every year outside of one since 2010, to really get a glimpse of what's to come here.
I think the fans, and that's great to see that the fact they're turning out leads me to believe that, yes, they will invest and put more resources into it, I would think. That's a pretty good sign. That's a pretty good indicator that
Kolpack,
people...
Normal to Murray's 5 hours, man. They can do that.
Oh, yeah.
That's a nothing.
NDSU won't.
No, but they will there. I think I did this, and now I forget, because Normal to Springfield, which they just did, that's a 5.5 hour bus ride. So there's 2. This is again why the Southern schools signed off on getting them into the league. Terre Haute to Murray is 4. I think the longest one, if I remember right, was Youngstown. Let me look here quick. This is the joy of doing this on Google. That's 9. I think
9 hours.
Probably fly to Youngstown.
Oh, you can't drive 9 hours.
I would hope they would fly.
St. Intramural's dumb.
Well, some treat it like that. Who am I forgetting here?
But if you're going to be in the valley, you got to do things right. You got to do it Valley way.
Carbondale's 2 hours away, so they have at least 3 bus rides there that they will not even hesitate on. Maybe even Cedar Falls, I'd imagine they might do that one, and that's little bit of a hike. But yes, that's another reason why the Southern schools signed off on this school coming in. They have some athletes. Quarterback's good. DJ Williams, running back. Their tight end is a monster. You're going to see him
6'6", 245.
Yeah, Cole Rusk is his name. He's got 22 receptions, 3 touchdowns this season. Taylor Shields is one of their other outstanding receivers, number 18. He's got 4 touchdown grabs. This is a better football team than the one we saw last week.
And I pointed out in my story that they, with Dean Hood, the head coach, wants to get this team bigger, stronger, in the trenches on the lines. He says that's the biggest difference. Yeah. It's not like they're small.
No.
I mean, they average 315 in the 5 starting spots on the offensive line. There's just must be a different 315, I'm guessing. I mean,
the Ohio Valley 315 is much different than the
Missouri Valley 315.
That would be my 2 cents on that. We've seen it. Ohio Valley football, again, is high flying. We're going to try and score, and defense sometimes is optional. I would think that's probably what they're used to, and that is certainly not the Missouri Valley brand of football as we've come to know it.
Well, with the Bison, and maybe as we look ahead here to Saturday, do the rankings put any more fire into you?
What do you think?
I wouldn't like it if I was a player. Yeah. Wouldn't you? I mean,
I think certainly for the older veterans that have been around,
that would kind of torque me off.
I would say, well, that's the first time I can ever remember them doing that, and us not being a part of it. Like, we're on the outside here, so I think there could be. Whatever gets you going. Knowing full well what's ahead after this week. That is the season. Playoff football, as Bull used to tell you and I all the time, it really begins November 1, Kolpack, because as things sit in the Valley, we're going to dive into this more on game day on Saturday morning, where the standings sit, there is going to be a glut of teams that I think can get to 7 wins. And there's going to be potentially 1 to 2 Valley teams, and North Dakota State could be one of them left out of the playoff party.
If they lose to the wrong teams and they end up 7-4 to the wrong teams, they will be left out.
I don't think
NDSU's got it. They got to get to 8-3.
Yeah. I think that the coaching staff is probably full aware of that, knowing, okay, this is where things are at, and who's not playing who. That's also important, Kolpack. Who don't you play is almost as important, maybe more important than who do you play over the last 4 games.
With Northern Iowa's stomping of UND last week, and UND's stomping of NDSU the week before.
Correct.
That leaves, and if NDSU loses to UNI, that leaves them behind both of those teams.
You don't have the head-to-head on either team. And if both of those are 7-4, they're going to take them over NDSU. I don't care what.
And SIU has that FBS win.
Right. Still a lot to be played.
Yeah.
The Bison are going to be without likely their top tight end in Joe Stoffel. Matt Entz, when I asked him about that, seems like we're going to do a committee of guys between Hunter Brosio, Carson Williams, Finn Diggins. I am intrigued. Carson Williams had a big 24-yard catch in the game last week. He's got the body type, the transfer from Buffalo, who sat last year just learning the offense. So I think he's got some potential to maybe do some things there.
Time for him to shine then,
maybe,
right?
How about what did you gauge from last week? You had to go out and win the game, which they did, and they won convincingly against a Western Illinois team that is certainly struggling. I'd imagine they need to bank another one of those performances on Saturday, in my mind.
It's hard to bank on how you...
But what I'm saying, they have to store that away. They need to do that again on Saturdays.
What I went to say, it's hard to gauge, if that's the word, on a team that is so bad as Western Illinois, other than that it's a good confidence builder for them when there's doubts out there. That was a convincing win, 52-7. Yep. It was very higher ranked team like when you play a lesser opponent and you don't let them hang around.
Yeah, they didn't mess around with that. They took care of business. Still, the quest is out there. They have played 7 football games and yet to have a 100-yard rusher yet this season from the running back position, which, again, astonishes me that Barika Penu got to 95 on Saturday. That's as close as they've gotten so far.
Yeah, Roger, but he lined up as a running back, though.
That doesn't count.
Yeah, it does.
No, not of the traditional running backs.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Of the traditional, of Tamarick Williams, TK Marshall, and Barika Penu.
But his 3 carries were lined up as a running back, Dom.
Are we going to see more of that in your mind going forward?
Well, why wouldn't you, I guess? There was less looking to the sideline. Maybe that's a product where they didn't have to really rely on different kind of audibles, and they just knew they were going to run over the poor leathernecks. But there's more power football and less RPO action.
I think there was certainly a return to what we've seen over the past, or NDSU offense there. Defensively, I thought Dylan Hendricks is starting to play that part of the guy on the edge. It has to be more consistent, but we're starting to see a bit more
disruptive. You got to be disruptive.
Yeah.
And I think the D-line's been pretty decent, and they've been but they just, a few more sacks would be in order, but you just generally have to be disruptive, and especially heading into November, you need those dudes to really alter games and alter game plans on the other side.
I did have an email to us to ask this question. Were you surprised there wasn't more younger players that either started or earned more playing time last week?
Well,
I was not.
No, because you just don't bench guys, I guess. I mean, at this point. But
I guess you can earn more reps going forward.
Maybe that happened. Maybe that happened in their film review.
Yeah. I'll be intrigued to see that going.
Najee Nelson
going ahead here, especially at those spots, at a cornerback spot. Kelly Watson dressed, who was a true freshman and was the fourth running back. Potentially, maybe he gets more reps out there with Owen Johnson's injury. I think some that were clamoring for, well, let's see the redshirt freshman at linebacker in a Staling and play more, or a Darius Givens. I mean, they got out there, but the game was, I think, well in hand by then. And I don't know if that quenched Bison fans' thirst for seeing younger players.
I see what
these
fans are saying, and bench those guys, bench the starters, but then there's other factors like losing a team too.
Yeah.
I mean,
or losing the game.
Well, you gotta. Yeah, I mean, you just can't make wholesale changes when you're 4-2.
It just now they're 5-2. So can they do it now?
No. I mean, they'll probably get a couple players back, or at least we'll get Wisniewski back.
Wisniewski was trending towards playing certainly later in the week. I think he was feeling better. I don't know about Wodarczyk, that he may sit again, so we might get Oscar Benson back at the linebacker spot on the outside. I thought actually he had his best game as a Bison on Saturday. Was quicker. He even told me that on Tuesday when I visited with him, that he was things had slowed down. He was quick to the ball, had a nice pass breakup that led to the Kopp interception. He seemed more confident out there than we saw him last year.
Yeah, you can't play slow. You can't play slow at this level. You can't be thinking. You have to react and play.
That's the intriguing part on this, though. On the back seven is still, from people have told me, it's like it just does not look like the Bison of old.
Well,
from the linebacker and the secondary.
And that's why. I mean,
there's no doubt. But I don't know. So the people are asking, okay, is there help coming? And I don't have an answer to that.
Because we don't.
Because people haven't played enough to give us a definite opinion on the young linebackers and the young secondary, if there's pieces that can help going forward. At the moment, the crazy part was asked about it. Entz was on Monday. They haven't played any nickelbacks yet. None yet this season. That you kind of, okay, that might be indicative as well of, okay, maybe they're just not ready to do that.
Or maybe they're just not good enough. You talk about these younger players. I mean, maybe here's the thing. The redshirt freshmen have been here almost 2 years now. I mean, you get here in June. The true freshmen got here in June. This is their third month of practice.
Right.
So I guess if you're not ready to play now, will you ever be ready?
Well, you always tell me third year is the year when it starts to click. And granted, I know some of these are just redshirt freshmen, but I mean they've practiced a ton too. I'm waiting. We'll see what happens here against a Murray State team that is playing indoors for just the fourth time ever in school history.
The Metrodome, Dakota Dome, and the Georgia Dome.
The Metrodome was one of them. There's one you could have stumped me on that I didn't know that going into this the week. They played in the Metrodome against the Gophers way back when.
That was a good Murray team, too, and they got stopped 66-10.
They have not made the playoffs since 2002. We'll try to end that drought here in the coming years. I'm not sure. It's going to be an uphill battle. There's no doubt on that. I don't want to give away any of our picks, but just looking ahead to this weekend, I don't know if we're at Separation Saturday, but we're pretty darn close. We got 1 versus 4 meeting in Vermilion with SDSU and USD. We're going to find out again, I think, for South Dakota, sold out last time.
So it's going to be minor divide Saturday?
Maybe. The Jacks, last time they lost in Vermilion was the Vermiracle 2 years ago.
Yeah, not happening again.
Okay.
Nope.
He's already given away his pick there. I mentioned.
I told you I'm not going to pick against South Dakota State at all this year unless their whole backfield gets hurt.
Montana State plays at Idaho on Saturday afternoon.
I'm still studying that baby.
Veek's team is good. I think they've added a portal running back, Julian Davis from Wisconsin, at a big game Saturday night against Sacramento State. They always can play defense. I think they've made that jump, Kolpack, from they're here to now they're up here and ready to be considered. Certainly, they gave SDSU all they wanted in Brookings back in September. You know,
I still contest they won that game.
You think there should have been a touchdown?
Yes.
They call it a touchdown on the field. So
well, that's what I'm saying. There's way too close to overrule.
It was pretty close there. There's one team out there, by the way, that's just ripping off wins. That's our friends in Conway. Central Arkansas is up to 5-2. They're off a bye. I told you when they left Fargo, I didn't think they were going to lose again. They haven't lost since. I think they're going to finish 9-2, and that win will look awfully good if the Bison need to do some resume comparing when we get to November 18th.
True. And I thought they had good athletes. I thought they looked like a pretty good FCS team.
Powell's at 878 yards on the season and 6 touchdowns. That's not necessarily where I thought he would be.
I thought he'd be more
Peyton-esque on that. Let me get his game log.
What did he do last game?
So last week or 2 weeks ago against SFA, they had the bye. 16 for 95. He got really slowed down against SEMO. Only 13 for 36. Because prior to that, it was 218 against the Bison, 256 against Abilene Christian, 115 against Southern Utah. So if he wants in that Peyton conversation, the next 4 games have got to be astronomical. I don't even know who's the favorite right now in the Peyton race. That's a good question. I don't know.
Well, South Dakota State's a little pretty balanced.
I would say it's not anybody on the Jackrabbits right now. It's probably somebody from Western Carolina that's probably the leading contender.
Some Bob
on that.
Smith who's just going crazy statistically.
I got a correction, by the way. They showed Aztec clips for South Dakota, not for South. Either way, what are you doing? It's not San Diego State. It's simple ESPN. We've been down this road before. My goodness. And they thought about going there for College Game Day. I mean, just that. Now here's the ultimate slap in the face. Yeah, we didn't come. And, we're going to show a San Diego State clip instead of either South Dakota or South Dakota State.
So the people in the truck or who's ever making the decisions, do you watch your own network? Do you watch?
Well, worse than that, are you watching the video that you're cutting? That's the only thing I do during the week. Okay, make sure I've got the right stuff that we're going to be talking about during this particular week. So, all right, there you have it. Latest edition of the Kolpack and Izzo podcast. Don't forget, everybody, Bison Game Day gets you started 10 a.m. on Saturday morning from inside Gate City Bank Field at the Fargodome. Then the Farmers Union Insurance kickoff show gets going at 2:20, and then we hit the air at 2:30 between the Racers and the Bison. Special guest appearance on Saturday by the Jackman. My son is going to make his debut at a Bison football game.
Oh,
he's going to
he's
the
not
game.
Coming on the show.
Not on the show. He's coming to he wants to see the real show, which is the football game. So he'll be there on Saturday.
Is he going to wear the T-shirt?
He's gonna wear. I know he's got a Bison shirt too.
He's the Izzo nickel shirt.
I know. He might wear his Bison shirt. I don't know. He's pretty excited about it. He wants to meet Thundar. He told me that's all he cares about. So that's pretty cool as well. For Jeff Kolpack, I'm Dom Izzo. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. See you next week here on the pod.